What's up everybody, Faber Glass from MMA Talk here, and with 2019 coming to an end, it is time to look forward to 2020 with a top 10 list today. The 10 Canadian fighters that we want to see in the UFC in 2020. In fact, 2019 has been such a good year for Canadians getting into the big show. We've seen people like Marc-André Barriault, Charles Jourdain, Carl Prepelic, Cole Smith and Tristan Connolly all make the jump to the big leagues, and there are way more fighters fighting in Canada now that do deserve to make the jump next year. We're here to look at 10 of them that are the most likely to. Before we get going, I must say that there are people fighting in Canada or Canadian fighters fighting around the world that have been in the UFC before. I will exclude them from this list because I wanted to make some room for people that are still didn't get the chance to fight in the UFC. So no Jesse Ronson, Jeremy Kennedy or Shane Campbell on the list, even though they do deserve to be fighting in the UFC. Also, I've got some honorable mentions. I kept 5 of them. It was really surprising how it was tough to even make a top 15 list without having to make some really difficult choices. It's a good news to know that there are more than 15 fighters that do deserve to be fighting in the UFC by next year. Unfortunately for some of them, I had to make some tough choices and only keep 15. So here are my 5 honorable mentions. Christien Savoie, Alex Morgan, Jared Revel, Michael Hill, and Mariusz Ksiazkiewicz. Let's go on with the list, and at number 10 we've got Graham Park. He's a light heavyweight from Western Canada. He's the unified light heavyweight champion. He has made a comeback in 2019. We haven't seen him since 2016 before them, but this year he beat Tyler Warren and went on to beat Sheldon Dole to win the title that was vacated by his training partner Teddy Ash, who almost made the list. When I was talking about tough choices, that was a tough choice. But Graham Park, he's 7'2", not the most experienced on the list, but new blood is always needed at 205, and having a championship in one of the biggest organizations in Canada really puts him next in line at that division to be the one that signs with the UFC sooner than later. At number 9, Michael Dufort. He's entering the best years of his career, man. He's only 7-3, 10 pro fights, but he's been fighting for 6 or 7 years now. He's fighting for New Era. Only fought once this year, won against Mexican Miguel Arizmendi to come back from his first loss in 7 fights. He lost to Jesse Ronson at 170 in a split decision. He had trouble making the 155 cut before, but he's definitely mastered it and has made weight many times since. So he's a real good prospect, one of the most natural fighters on that list, and I would really love to see him compete in the UFC's biggest division. At number 8, Chris Larsen. He's the less experienced guy on that list at only 5 wins and 1 loss, but he's a heavyweight. There is always a need for heavyweight fighters. He's the unified champion too. He just won that belt by avenging the only loss he had in his pro career against Jared Kilkenny. So in theory, he avenged his only loss, so it's like he's undefeated, and he's on the verge of making it into the UFC. He's one of Canada's brightest prospects, and he deserves to get that chance sooner rather than later. Maybe he will have to go through the Contender Series first, but I feel like Chris Larsen is a real good candidate to make it to the UFC in 2020. At number 7, we've got handsome Scott Hudson. He's the BTC double champion, 155 and 165. He's won 4 fights in a row, 2 of them by guillotine finish, and he's been fighting tougher and tougher competition by the fights, and he's beating everybody. So I guess he's ready for the UFC. He's probably the top dog in BTC, and I would really like to see him get a shot next year. At number 6, Aaron Jeffery. AJ is 7-2. He had a shot at the Contender Series last summer, but he fought a real good guy in Brendan Allen and lost for the first time in a while. He's been able to bounce back since. He's the BTC middleweight champion, and he's a real good candidate to have another shot at the Contender this summer. Since he's already been there, they know him, they know his face, they know his name, so I feel like there are good chances that AJ gets a shot next summer, and he won't miss it that time. I can guarantee it. So Aaron Jeffery, I've got him at number 6 on the list. At number 5, we've got Neal Anderson. This guy is on fire. This 155er has won 6 fights in a row, including wins over top fighters in Canada like Curtis Demars and Christien Savoie in his last 2 bouts. The unified prospect is indeed ready to make the jump in the biggest and deepest division in the UFC with his 10-3 record. The only step that's probably left for him would be to win that unified belt, but I feel like it's gonna come sooner rather than later. At least he's gonna have that shot early 2020, so I feel like Neal Anderson is a real good candidate to fight in the UFC next year. At number 4, Chad Anheliger. Man, can you believe that at one point in his career, this guy had a 2 wins and 5 losses MMA record, but since he has won 8 in a row, is the Rise FC double champion at 125 and 135. He's beaten some of the best guys in Canada in the last couple of years, and he just won a fight against an undefeated prospect, Brady Easton, in his last bout. So I feel like if there's a feel-good story, a guy that started his career in a rocky way but has since become one of the most dominant fighters in the country, it is Chad Anheliger, and I would really love to see him going in the UFC's flyweight division. At number 3, we've got another flyweight, Malcolm Gordon. This guy has been ready for a while. He is 12-3 now. He's submitting absolutely every fighter that he's fighting. He's on a tear, and his last performance against Yoni Sharbatov, who is an ultimate fighter, veteran, just proves that he's got the level to be there. And with the UFC that looks like they're gonna keep that flyweight division, I just don't know why Malcolm Gordon isn't a part of it yet. So he needs to be there. Please someone sign him into the UFC. At number 2, we've got KB Bhullar. He's undefeated at 8-0. He is the unified middleweight champion, and he's just beaten UFC veteran Matt Dwyer in a performance that absolutely proves he's ready for the big league. So I don't think I've got much to say other than he needs to get signed sooner rather than later. This guy is ready and is one of the brightest Canadian prospects that could get signed to fight in 2020 in the UFC. And at number 1, we've got Windsor's own TJ Laramie. He is by far the readiest fighter on the list. His last performance at PFC 12 against Andrew Cruz was just his best ever. This guy is able to strike real well. We've seen his wrestling is top control, the way that he finishes people on the ground, but he's shown real good improvements in his last fight. This guy is not only ready to fight in the UFC, but would be one of the brightest prospects to enter the division at 145. He's suffered setbacks. He has lost in his past. He has came back from these losses, and he has came back stronger. This guy in his real young career have seen a lot of stuff, and he can be one of the brightest Canadians that could make his way into the UFC. That's why I had no choice but to put him at number 1, TJ Laramie. And it's gonna conclude my list of the 10 Canadians that we want to see in the UFC in 2020. Please leave me a like if you liked the video. Just comment to let me know. Are you down with my list? Are you not? Who did I forget? Who that I should have put high or low? Or if you got any feelings towards it, just leave it in the comments and we'll get to talk about it. Also, you need to subscribe to MMA Talk on YouTube and on Facebook. I'm on Instagram too at @DMMATalk and on Twitter at @D_MMA Talk. Thank you all for listening, and we'll speak sometimes soon.